The South African Local Government Association is demanding that municipalities which paid more than 1 billion rand to consultants for financially reporting pay back the money. The South African Local Government Association says more than 1.2 billion rand was spent by municipalities to audit their books before they were sent to them to the auditor-general. Now, Khomotso Letsatsi is SALGA's Municipal Finance Chief Officer, and she joins us now from Johannesburg. Ms. Letsatsi, thank you very much for your time. Firstly, which municipalities are these? Are you able to name them?
So at this point in time, I actually don't have a list for you in terms of the municipalities other than the categories that have basically been provided, which is the additional information that the AG still has to share with us as SALGA, as we would normally request a detailed information that will then inform our communications with municipalities in making sure that those aspects are actually addressed in their audit response plans.
Yeah, the major reason for the use of consultants, Ms. Letsatsi, what are your findings? Why is it that municipalities are so heavily reliant on these consultants?
So the AG basically outlined three main areas in terms of the audit that was undertaken for 1920. That 68% was due to lack of skills, and basically 30% was basically lack of skills and vacancies, and about 2% was completely due to vacancies. So I guess the reasons basically differ across the board.
Yeah. And then you say in your findings that there are those municipal officials who may have colluded in order to now defraud whatever municipality they may be working in as they appoint these consultants. Talk to us about that. What actually was done here?
So Tony, if you basically look at the category in terms of what basically transpired where consultants were used, and I think it's very important that we don't demonize or rather paint everybody with the same brush in terms of the use of consultants. It's not necessarily a bad thing to do, given the complexity of local government as a whole. I could say that having worked there for over 10 years as the former treasurer for City of Joburg. But I think one thing that we say as SALGA, that where there's clear criminality and fraud that's basically involved, there must definitely be a follow-through. Those officials must then be identified and basically be charged accordingly in terms of the prescripts of legislation, that's basically the MFMA. But let's just unpack it a bit. Out of the 1 billion odd that use consultants, I think 97 of them rather were financially unqualified. So there has been marked improvement. Yeah. And then 60 of them that actually spent around 350 were still qualified. And I think 5 and 10 got adverse findings and disclaimers respectively. And it's that area that we should actually be focusing on. The 75 odd that had not had improved basically audit outcomes. But then the AG went further to basically unpack it to leave that only 17% where consultants were basically used. The consultants have not delivered in terms of that specific mandate. And that's the area that we're focusing on, basically as SALGA, to say where consultants have not delivered, they must be blacklisted, and those municipalities have got a responsibility to make sure that those consultants actually repay back the money to the municipality, and those officials that have actually authorized for payment to those consultants that have clearly not delivered must actually be disciplined as provided for by the legislation.
How much of this 1.2 billion went to corruption as opposed to a genuine lack of skills and therefore the need for consultants?
From what the AG has basically outlined, it's basically the 17% that we should actually be following up on, which is probably less than 200 million. So it's that 17% that we should basically, which is basically around 17 municipalities even, where consultants have not delivered. I mean, that's very clear, that needs to be called out basically for what it is. But I think the rest of it is basically due to the lack of skills, basically, and basically in areas where there's vacancies and municipalities had to basically rely on consultants. But we're also saying as SALGA that where there are warm bodies within a municipality, for basic things, elementary things like financial management, preparing financial statements, municipalities should not be relying on consultants to basically do that. And the other thing that the AG basically also highlighted is the fact that some of the municipalities, they found that they're not very diligent in terms of recording their transactions throughout the year. Pretty much runs the operation of the municipality from the bank statement. So if you go to brain, and even the most specialized consultants like your PwC, your KPMG, and that towards the end, when the systems are basically not in place, the records are not in place, you're not going to get a clean audit at the end of the year. So these processes must be institutionalized. If they start with the consultants at the beginning of the year to help them build those systems and basically processes and capacitate where there's need to capacitate, then they would tend to see better results than we're basically seeing coming out of the AG report.
Finally, the drive to professionalize the public service, Ms. Letsatsi. What is your role as SALGA? You speak or you represent municipalities. You speak for local government. What is your role in tandem with that of government itself in trying to professionalize this environment?
So definitely you would know that as SALGA as an association, as much as we don't have the executive authority over the municipality, but as an advocacy and lobbying body, one of the programs that we basically have in place, and that has been quite effective over the years, is around the capacity building and especially around the incoming councillors, and of course would tighten as well as capacity building in terms of various areas in the municipality. So our role is basically putting together that induction program, but making sure, I think, in improving so that there is return on investment, that we are actually continuous in our approach, not just only during the transition. There's definitely a need for that. But also what is very important is that we've got other stakeholders within the IGR system, basically, that are also playing a role and a much bigger role in terms of capacity building, and are far much more funded than SALGA is in terms of capacity building. And that's your National Treasury and basically your COCTA, supported by your provincial COCTAs and provincial national treasuries. As you might know, that in terms of the legislation, from time to time when municipalities get into trouble, the MECs or COCTAs in provinces can actually come in and intervene in terms of the Section 139. And we've also seen shortcomings in that particular regard, that those municipalities that were under administration are basically not yielding the results that would have been anticipated for reasons why they were basically put under administration. So I guess the collaboration, which is what we're saying as SALGA, that the collaboration and consolidation of this program would be much more important in making sure that we are basically impactful. But over and above that, our messaging from 18-19 basically is to say that as much as we've got all these capacity building programs in place, we have seen that the return on investment is not necessarily desirable given the picture as we see it. But it's then important that there's leadership in terms of consequence management and extracting accountability. Yeah. And all those that are empowered by the legislation, like your National Treasury Section 216 of the Constitution, allows them to basically withhold the equitable share if they have to enforce compliance. And we've seen them basically doing that. But although they can only do it for a limited period, because eventually the communities would suffer if that money is eventually held. But we will extract whatever levers that are basically there. Would encourage our partners in the IGR system to basically do the same. Make sure that we basically set the sector on a path of sustainability.
Ms. Letsatsi, let me ask you this final question. And if there was one takeaway from this conversation, it probably will come from this question, and that is the picture in terms of trying to professionalize and, importantly, trying to get people with the right skills in the right positions in local government. Is that picture improving, or is it getting worse by the day?
So look, the reality of the matter is that, and maybe let me tell you what is it that we're actually doing as SALGA, because as I basically indicated, that 30% where there were issues in terms of reliance on consultants, one had to do with the lack of skills and basically vacancies, right? So there's municipalities that are basically struggling in terms of attracting the right skills. You would know our metros are better placed, and that's why pretty much all of them are basically, obviously with the exception of Ekurhuleni that got a clean audit, but they are in that unqualified space as opposed to the rest of the municipalities. I mean, we've got about 27, basically, they're out of the 257, and the rest is basically qualified disclaimers and those that basically submitted financials late. So the vacancy issue is definitely an issue to be addressed that we're basically flagging as well, but also making sure that the right people with the right skills are basically appointed in those positions, because if you want to appoint the wrong people, it doesn't matter how much training you basically provide them. They would not be able to deliver. And hence, that's why even where there are warm bodies in those positions, you find that they're still reliant on preparing of financial statements by consultants, which is absolutely unacceptable.
Khomotso Letsatsi, thank you very much for your time. She is SALGA's Chief Officer of Municipal Finance. That's the picture as far as local government is concerned.